Welcome to Zone Coverage. We're at Stewart's TV and Appliance in the Sub-Zero Wolf Kitchen. I'm Scott Petrak, Browns beat writer for the Chronicle Telegram, Medina Gazette, and BrownsZone.com. And this is Jim Ingraham, our sports columnist. Well, Jim, we've done a whole year of episodes and not one win to talk about. But we do have plenty to discuss, and that's what an 0-16 season will do for you. So let's start with the big thing. Browns lose in Pittsburgh in the season finale against Pittsburgh's backups, have a chance, 2 fourth-quarter turnovers, Corey Coleman drops a pass, and then Jimmy Haslam says Hugh Jackson is coming back for year number 3. Can you explain that?
The score, the
Well, I was thinking
turnovers,
more-
or the coaching thing?
Well, any of the above.
The game looked a lot like the season, so if you wanted to just give Browns fans in the future one taste of how
Right.
this team played, that game would be a good one to show them. The coaching thing is beyond a mystery. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody – I mean, there were coaches that had winning records this year that got fired. And I wonder what they're thinking when they see Hugh Jackson with a 1-31 record still having a job. If nothing else, you would think that the money part of it would appeal to Jimmy Haslam. I mean, how do you can't sell this to a fan
Right.
base? I mean, the fans are enraged by this, and you're already losing season tickets and corporate sponsorship. So why you would, if for no other reason, not do it that? And there are plenty of other reasons to do it.
Sure.
And apparently none enough to sway Haslam into doing it.
I don't know if I should be impressed at all that Jimmy Haslam is choosing not to kind of follow the PR plan, because the PR plan would be to fire you, because it's hard to find anyone who says he should come back. And this is the same Jimmy Haslam who fired coaches after 1 and 2 seasons. Nobody's had a third season under him. No Browns coaches has a third season since Romeo Crennel in 2008. So, like, part of me kind of wants to compliment him for having a backbone and standing up for what he believes in. But then when you ask him for what he believes in, you know, he says, well, remember, Hugh, it was only 2 years ago. Hugh was a hot coordinator. He points to great leadership. And either of those might be true. I do think Hugh can lead men, and he can be a leader of a football team. I think guys followed him for much of his 2 years. But 1-31, the fan base against you, new general manager, it just all points up to making a move. And the fact that he didn't, you mentioned the fans, and I asked Jimmy after the game, I said, how do you sell this to fans? And he said, when we win, Hugh will be the hero. And I'm just asking you, how do you think fans view this whole situation? We have the parade coming up on Saturday. You have your coach coming back that nobody wants. And then your owner's telling you to have patience after more than a decade of losing and says you'll like him when he wins when there's no evidence he's going to win.
Yeah, it's almost like throwing a wet blanket on top of a wet blanket. I mean, it's just – it makes no sense at all. And I don't know how the fans could react any way but negatively.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just – if you're ever going to – even the leadership angle, I'm not sure I'm on board with, because, I mean, if a team goes 0-16 and you're praising the leadership of the
Right. I hear
coach.
you.
I mean, you know, the best statistic for leadership is the 1-loss record, and he's got the worst 1-loss record ever for 2 years. So even that doesn't work. I just think he's being stubborn and wants to not appear to blow up the whole thing again, and this is his way of doing it, and he picked the worst possible year and coach to do it with.
Yeah, it's impossible to argue with that. I guess my last point on that with the fans is you draft a quarterback number 1, whoever that is, and then you draft somebody else at number 4, and you have 4 picks in the top 35. Is that enough to change kind of not perception, but change attitude and give fans enough hope where when we get to training camp in July, they're paying attention again?
I would think. I'm sure that's what they're hoping.
Yeah.
I mean, if ever there was going to be some marquee buzz names and big name guys coming out of the draft, it should be this draft when you have 2 of the top 4 picks. That's going to be 2 guys that presumably all the fans are going to know, and they'll have seen them on TV a lot, and they'll be excited by that. But then it gets back to what about the other 50 spots on the roster? You know, you've got to draft good from the first round through the last round. You've got to make good free agent signings. You've got to do the stuff that hasn't been done the last 2 or 3 years here, and the odds of hitting on all that seem remote. And the biggest thing with Jackson is, what if they lose the first 3 games next year? Then they fire the coach then, and then there's another wasted year. So it just seems like the whole thing is set up to fail again, really.
Yeah, and it's really difficult to argue with that, right? Hugh's going to have to pull out a miracle to extend his job into 2019 for sure. He already pulled off one miracle, and even to get through 2018, because the temperature on that hot seat is going to ratchet up. If he goes 0-4, 0-5, you know what you would expect him to be fired. And then you promote somebody, then it's a wasted year. Who are you going to hire? You're 100% right. And when Jimmy talked about Hugh's leadership, I could see some of what he was talking about. And then we went in the locker room Monday, and we talked to Jason McCourty and Duke Johnson. And they, for the first time, really expressed their frustration, some anger over comments all year by Hugh Jackson, by Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator, by new general manager John Dorsey, that there wasn't enough talent to win, right? And John Dorsey's famous, they didn't have enough real players. And Jason McCourty said, we hate to hear that. And it bothered him that it came from within the organization. So do you think that could have a lingering effect into 2018, that some of these same players that the GM and coaching staff criticized openly have to come back and ask to play for the same guy, and the same guy who went 1-31?
Yeah, I think it would it'd be impossible not to, I would think. And that's the kind of thing, so many times this year, the Browns people will say really not good things to say like that. I mean, why would you even say that? We all know it's true. There's no need to grandstand for the fans and say, I know it too, and a lot of these guys shouldn't be in the league, and we need better players and all that. That it's fine to think that, but when you can't say that, because you know that there's going to be a good chunk of those players are going to be back next year and not playing for a different coach, but the same coach that kind of threw them under the bus to a certain extent this year. So that was another just a poor thought out strategy by this front office.
Yeah, and it felt like Hugh all season long was stating his case why he should be back regardless of record, and why he should stay and Sashi Brown shouldn't stay. And it almost feels like he just said it enough times that Jimmy Haslam was convinced, Yeah, it's not his fault, it's not his fault, it's not his fault. And okay, well, if it's not his fault, why would we fire him? Jim, the 2008 Lions are the only other team to go 0-16. And I'm not sure if they had podcasts back then. So we could be the first people to talk about looking back at an 0-16 season. So I'm going to ask you, besides the record, what's the worst part of this, 3-month long, 4-month long, kind of trudge into history?
Well, I think the biggest thing is you've got the same owner that hasn't been able to get this thing up on the track again, and he's going to be the owner again next year. He's going to have the same coach next year. I mean, when you got a team this bad with this bad of a record, the one thing you have to sell is hope. Yeah. And I'm not sure they can sell hope right now because, they've gotten rid of Sashi Brown, but the same coach with the worst record in history for 2 years, the owner that's gone through coaches and front office people left and right for 3, 4, 5 years is still in place. So what hope should a fan have that this is going to change and change for the better? I mean, it can't get any worse, but, you'd like to give them some kind of, if you were to bring in a big-name coach or a coach with some success, that's the kind of thing you can hang your hat on and get the fan base excited again. But right now, it's just the same old thing. I mean, the draft will give them a little bit of a kick, I suppose, but when it gets down to training camp again, you've got pretty much the same people calling the shots.
Right, and I would point to inside some of the games, obviously the close losses, right? Because even if they went 2-14, it would still be a disastrous season. But you could point to, okay, it wasn't 0-16, right? It wasn't historic, but yet they couldn't finish out overtime games, right? At the end of the Jacksonville game, 3 straight turnovers. At the end of the Pittsburgh game, they fall apart. Green Bay, they can't keep that lead. So those are kind of the individual things you point to. And then overall, and this is another shot at Sashi Brown, but he made 24 draft picks in the last 2 seasons, and we haven't seen nearly enough impact from those guys. You can point to Joe Shorbert. He's going to the Pro Bowl as an alternate at linebacker. I don't think he's a Pro Bowl player. I think, he's done well. He's exceeded the expectations for a 4th-round pick. Even this year's first round. Myles Garrett performed well, in his limited action because of the injuries. David Njoku was hit or miss. Jabril Peppers didn't do anything until the last game of the year. So you just wonder, you would hope that with all these picks, you could point to a bunch of foundation pieces, and I'm just not sure they're there, and that speaks to kind of where this organization is and why John Dorsey's not running it. At 0-16, give me one good thing that you can point to from the 16 losses.
They don't play 17. I don't know. I suppose Garrett showed occasional times when you thought, but I mean, he's like you said, he didn't hit with the impact of J.J. Watt and Jabril, or not Peppers, the other Peppers with Carolina.
Oh yeah, the Julius
Peppers. I mean, those guys were instant impact guys, and Garrett had a couple moments, but he'd go 2-3 games where you didn't even notice him. Yeah. So there really is nothing. I think the biggest thing to be excited about again is going to be, the Browns' version of the Super Bowl, which is the draft. And, we get 3 months, 4 months now of talking about who they take at 1 and 4 and all the other spots. And that unfortunately is going to be, the only thing worth talking about right now.
Yeah, you're right. I would point to Duke Johnson just because he impressed me throughout the season, made play after play. And I know I had the big fumble late against Pittsburgh. But even he's not a starter. He was our player of the year. The local media voted him player of the year, and he probably plays 15 plays a game. So it just speaks to where this team is. You brought up the draft, and obviously that's the next thing we're going to point to after Hugh Jackson maybe adds an offensive coordinator or tweaks his staff. I know it's a long way away, and I don't know how much college football you've studied, but do you have an early favorite for number 1?
You know what? I like Darnold a lot until he faced Ohio State and faced a lot of future pros on that defense and looked horrible. He made some bad decisions. His instincts didn't look really good. I like Josh Rosen when I saw him against USC. Throws really good ball, but you wonder about him, and now he's already sounding off that he doesn't want to play in Cleveland. Right. The kid from Wyoming, I haven't seen at all. Yeah. I'm not a big Baker Mayfield fan. I think I've still got the Manziel scars to prevent us to get excited about him. So. Maybe it's Rosen or maybe it's Allen, and that seems to be the group right there. Right. Unless you want to just go all out on a guy like Kirk Cousins and bring a guy like that in, and then just wait another year for a younger quarterback.
Yeah, I haven't studied the draft quarterbacks yet, and I'm looking forward to doing that. But right now I'm on the no. I know I don't want to draft Baker Mayfield at number 1. Probably not in the top 10 because 6'4" quarterbacks don't do it for me. I'm worried about Big 12 quarterbacks, and I just don't think you can spend that kind of draft collateral on a guy that has those kind of questions. And then Saquon Barkley, I was talking to people in the press box Sunday, and some people want to draft him number 1 or number 4. I just think that's way too high to take a running back, and to me, he's an inconsistent running back, and I need to watch more of him. I've seen him play a couple times. I just think you have to stick to your plan, and plan can't be draft a 6'4" quarterback at number 1 or a running back in the top 5, and you can throw Zeke Elliott at me, and I still would say it's just not worth it. You have reasons why you draft certain players at certain spots in the draft, and I just don't think running back is worth the top 5 pick. Last, before we get out of here, Josh Gordon, Corey Coleman, one or both or neither come back next year?
Boy, I think Josh will be back, assuming he's not suspended. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Coleman, I'm not sure. I mean, Sashi Brown, I think, was the guy that drafted him, and he's not here anymore, so there's no one to speak up for him. He's done absolutely nothing to show he can be an impact guy. I mean, he looks like a 4th or 5th receiver, and that catch or non-catch at the end of the Steelers game is going to stick in everyone's head for the entire winter. So I would be more inclined to think he wouldn't be back.
Yeah, I think Gordon will be back again. That's with caveat, does he stay clean? But I think I liked where his head was this season. And Corey Coleman, it almost feels like a fresh start would do him and the team good. He kind of emblemizes the Sashi Brown tenure, and not in a good way. Thank you for watching all season long, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Happy New Year.